Hello everybody, Anton is here. So before I decided to make the full functional vehicle design in 3D code, I did a test tutorial where created the whole kind of sketch. So I was looking for the ways to create stuff pretty fast and still that would look mechanically correct. Then I thought it was a pretty good idea to upload this sketch process to YouTube because I show all the key points that I showed later on in the full tutorial. And here it's a much faster process. And this part is about the suspension and how I created that inside 3D code fairly quickly in a few minutes, and it's really quite sketchy anyway. So now I have the pose figures in place. Let me create the wheels. For that we'll create the new layer, and I want to switch it into the voxel mode and call it wheel. Then let's go into the objects tab and hit the primitives and create the cylinder. So I'll pick the cylinder from here, make it a bit bigger, and make it smaller, hit apply. Now I have the wheel, switch into transform mode, so I use a W as my hotkey for that, so then I use control, rotate, and this is the center of the wall right now, so I can see that my figures are offset, so I just pressed A to pick the character, but I want to pick all of them, so I'll just pick the top layer and move it in place. Then I pick the wheel and I move it across right here, so this is like approximately good distance. Then what I want to do is I want to activate the symmetry here and hit X. So press S on it's a default hotkey. So you can see right now the symmetry plane is right in the middle of the world, which is great because now I can do the clone instance and it will just have it here. So I'm doing the instancing of the wheels, so then at any given point of time I'll be able to modify this wheel and it will be reflected across. So then I pick all of these wheels together and I hit clone instance and move them across to the back. And then I will create a new layer and try to put all of them inside, and it doesn't like to do it all together. Have to do it one by one. Just put it inside, 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 inside. You can also go and rename the wheels properly, so you have the proper name. Like this is our like front right wheel. So I renamed everything. If I want to change the position or size of the wheels, since they look a bit big, I can go into the pose tool, or I use a Shift W hotkey, pick everything up and make it a bit smaller, and then lift it up, and it will be moving these guys accordingly. If I move on this axis, that will kind of jump across as well. So here I'll need to shift from pose to just transform, and so we have the front and the front, pick them together and just move them closer, further away, depending on how I need it to be placed. Also, the guys kind of looking they placed way too high, so we'll just drop them down about here. And now we can go into the suspension and design of it. I would presume that if you're watching this video that you don't have too much knowledge about car suspensions, and I didn't have any at all like a couple of years ago before I started to really study it. And if you just Google car suspension, you will get a lot of information. It might be really quite overwhelming. In this tutorial I will only concentrate on the wishbone suspension. I will just talk about key points of it and how to make it so, and how to generally understand it, so then you will have the freedom to modify it and redesign it in a way that will breathe the new concept ideas into your designs, and at the same time will be still engineerily correct. Let's custom design our support beam for the wishbone suspension. So I will go and I'll pick the sphere tool right here. So it depending on the brush size, it can be bigger or smaller. And then I will click for the vertex line tool, so I can draw it across here, here, and here. That allows us to build this essentially a wishbone shape. Then I want to use a move tool and move these guys up front and smooth it a little bit, pressing shift, move back, just in more space for the control point over there. Then I want to make these guys bigger as well. And there we have our basic shape. Then I will go into the cut off tool and draw the circles here and a circle here. So this support beam will go up and down only in one axis over here, but in the middle here it is a ball joint, so it will have ability to rotate all around in any axis. It has a limited mobility because it's supported by the steering rod, by the support beams, and shock absorber also plays its role. But this is essentially our basic setup for the beam. To create a shock absorber, I need to link it to this bottom support beam. So I'll draw this part and just use the move tool to make it bigger, so I can then cut through a few parts. Then I'll just use the cut off tool here, cut off tool here for our link connection, since it will rotate in one axis over here. Then I already have a layer created called the shock absorber, just an empty layer. So then again I will be using a sphere, and I'll use a front view. Let's draw the line about here, and it's kind of tricky. I can't really snap this line properly, so I have to align it more or less. Okay, now we got that. So this is our rod to put everything on it. Then I will create the hydraulic damper. So I'll make this part bigger, so I'll place this in the middle, pressing shift and moving the pivot point. So using the cut off tool, I cut out everything that I don't need, push it out, put it down. Then I want, which we can call a damper. Oh, hydraulics, it doesn't actually. Hydraulic cylinder. And then I will duplicate that, and it will be our spring. So I want to delete everything that we have on the inside, and I have a hotkey for that. It's a backspace to clear the layer. So we clear it. I can see at the bottom that no longer have any triangles on the layer. And then I will go and into the primitives, and I will create the coil, which I already have selected here. And it's a bit offset, so I want to put it around there, make it bigger. Then let's make it, I don't want any symmetry because that will then destroy the coil. And let's change the diameter. That's too little. That's about right. Just hit enter, apply it to the layer, and that layer is pretty low res, so press Ctrl D to resample. Is my hotkey for that. So up sample everything to here, and I don't really like how it looks, so I'll just reapply this coil again to the layer, hit apply, and now we have it. And now we have a spring, and I can just cut out the bits where I don't want it to go any further. And I want to group it under one name. So what I will do is put it all on the inside. To be honest, I want to have an empty root layer, so I will create a new layer and put everything there. and put it up, and now we have a shock absorber group. I'll put it up there. So now every time I want to rotate anything, the whole thing will start to rotate too. Let's now just put it in place around here. I'm not really concentrating on the details. I'll probably remodel most of it later on. Just really getting you guys the whole picture. Have that little bit. Let me cut out. I'll use Alt C. It doesn't want to be cut out. Maybe it's there. Maybe it's here. No, a little 3D code bug. Oh, anyway, I'll fix it later. So I want to create a disk for the wheel. I'll call it a disk hub, so it will contain all the connections to like support beams, then steering rod and drive shaft. So I'm using the sphere tool again. I will switch to the sphere to circle draw mode, and I'll draw it here. So carry it across and make it thicker, and now it's not a uniform bit. To fix that, I need to go and say to uniform space, and now we have our main bit right there. I will just duplicate it for now, and like let's up it and intersect, and I will make it bigger. And I will use the voxel height tool right here, so it will be more less destructive. So can just hide everything I don't need, and then we use the unhide by pressing Ctrl and dragging the mask. So now I have like a housing for the top bits, or more or less. I want to make it bigger and maybe do something like this. For the connection, and I'll just use the move tool, push it out the bottom, and walk side again to cut out the hole. Okay, that's one part of the disc hub. For the front suspension, I will be using the steering rod, and let me draw it right here using the sphere tool and the line draw tool. Alright, so I have this rod right now, and you have a lot of freedom where to place it. So you can rotate it, put it up and down, you know, here and there. It will move along the disk hub, so that now doesn't have any connection points. So let's essentially create one. I'll duplicate this bit and move it across and rotate, and then I'll use the pose tool. Let's use the pose tool and drop it down to make it a bit smaller. And that's our part for the steering rod. We don't have a space here for the drive shaft because we have the shock absorber right here, but this is a front suspension. For the rear suspension, we can change and rearrange some elements. We can put the shock absorber at the top, and we will remove the steering rod as well. So let's do now the back suspension with the drive shaft. What I need to do is I cannot do a duplicate command on this layer because it won't duplicate the whole structure. I put everything in the front suspension here. So I will just go and use a clone command, and let's say reset axis to main bound reset axis, and now I can move it across to over here. So we don't need the this kind of steering rod, but I can reuse it as it's going to be our drive shaft, and I'll make it thicker. So that means I'll just scale it up. That's too much. about this much. I cut out extra material up and down. Then shock absorber here is intersecting with the drive shaft, and let's up it a little bit over here. So I will change the places of the support beams, so this guy will go up and this guy will go down, and shock absorbers can go here. So we essentially just reconfigured our configuration of, and I can remove that bit. Oops. That guy, trying to pick it, and it doesn't want to remove that easily. I had just to press backspace on the root layer to remove it. So, okay, we've done this guy, and this is really essentially our back suspension setup. So now we have a simplified model of the suspensions, and let's try to reconfigure different parts, right? So you have a lot of freedom here. So for example, the absorbers, they can be almost like any size and length, and can be inclined at different angles. I can go and say, okay, I want it to be connection right there, so it will just hit diagonally to that point. I want to make it longer, so it will be attached somewhere there. Okay, that's one approach. Here I want this to be much bigger. For example, the Dune buggies, they have pretty crazy suspension, and it doesn't have to be the same as in front. It can be completely different. It will be getting a different load as well, so, and different stress, so it can be go up and attached at the top over there. I mean, obviously you'll change the spring coil to make it a bit more realistic, and for that you'll need use some reference. So for example, that's one type. Then the length of these support beams can be different. The thickness of them can be all different. So if you want to make them, instead of being tubular, you want to make them just like this, just flat guys, is entirely possible. Why not? You can draw a lot more lines, for example. Why not to create this type of a structure and then play around with that? Then use some fill tool and they make more of an organic design around that to over strengthen this whole thing. And it's kind of cool. It's decided to connect there, but maybe not something I wanted. But just a sphere tool tends to snap to everything. Then just this part can be way longer than I've made it, right? So it could be a different shape. It could be this. It can be this. Well, not that. And by the way, every time I'm in the pose tool, every time I want to drop a selection, I use a Control D. This is a resample. Resample allows me to drop the selection easily, otherwise it's not that easy. Okay, let's move the move tool and do this. And just let's try to smooth it a little bit. So it can be way longer or way shorter. If you start to research and Google different suspensions, you'll be blown away by the amount of configuration you can achieve. But the most important part is just to understand that you have these links here and there, the links where they all attach to each other, and what's in between them is less relevant, and you have a lot of creativity to change these parts. And the steering rod is pushing the disc to rotate over there. So, but it can also place it, at the top, and it will be pushing that direction, still rotating. Or you can push it at the bottom, or you can push it at the front. So, again, a lot of combination to play around, and that will make your design way more believable when people see that you understand how this stuff moves actually in the real life.